one of the biggest things about actually building this creative space, building your brand, building your name, whatever it is the consistency in the work always comes first. I'm not going to dive into that. I have whole episodes on that. But I think the building aspect specifically, and this is why numbers matter, but I think it matters differently than how a lot of people focus on the numbers. A lot of people focus on the download numbers. And while that the download numbers are a reflection of how you process the other numbers, in my opinion. So what I'm saying in this is that all right. So one of the conversations that is always had in the creative space is like building, branding, and like what all goes into that. What does it mean? What's really building? And like one of the things that happens a lot in this creative space is the whole listen for listen, share for share, whatever it is, right? And while that has a place, especially with people that you're actually connecting with, that's not always building. We'll talk about the branding piece later with a person who specializes in branding and that I can't always speak to. They help me with my branding. But as far as the building aspect of it, in this creative space, it's easy to think of you listen to mine, I listen to yours. We'll see it in the Facebook groups. If you're in a podcast and Facebook group, you see it all the time. Even if you're on Twitter, you see the tons of tagging. We call it social nagging, not social tagging, because when you just tag a bunch of people who already follow you, that's not building. And I think often because of that quick gratification and that feeling like you get that quick, oh, they retweeted or oh, they'll tag it and like that, we forget about how do we actually build our brands. And so one of the things that I want to take this time out to point out is that the difference between doing things like tagging a bunch of people or spamming out your links in DMs, even email lists. Email lists are great because people usually have to provide you that email, which means that they're opting into it. They can opt out of it anytime. But even outside of that, if you track your actual analytics, meaning if you track where your links are going to, what's your click-through rate, what's your demographic, the download numbers become a reaction or a product of that, I should say. So don't just focus on the download numbers. That's not building. The retweets aren't necessarily building. And we'll get into the social media aspect of it here in a second. One of the biggest things that I want to point out is like if we're talking about numbers, the download numbers are a result. That's not what you should solely be focused on, how you build and how you promote and wherever else. Look at, and this is what, for example, one of the tools that I use is is Bitly, not Linktree, is Bitly. Every link that you ever see me post, whether it's a link to my Linktree, whether it's a link to the specific episode, whether it's a link to the YouTube, it all is I filter it in through Bitly. What Bitly does is that it creates a shortened link, which also helps with social media because we have those character limitations. But outside of that, it literally tracks the click-through rate. And from every different website. So I can take one link created with Bitly. I can post that on Facebook. I can post that on Twitter. I can post that in my Instagram profile. I can post that in my YouTube description. I can post it anywhere. And what that does is that it tells you on each one of those platforms how many links you're getting through that. And then depending on if they have to log in on that platform, for example, like with Facebook, usually people have to fill out their profile. They fill out male, woman. It breaks all that stuff down. And then you can know and you can look at how things are tracking for you overall. You can see, okay, more men than women are clicking on my link. So does that now take it to how you promote the next time? Are you gonna try to promote so you can get more women interaction from women or more male interaction? Are you gonna double down and say, well, our largest demographic seems to be are people who are interested in us or are men. So let's focus on really marketing to men, since that's what it seems our base is. And then if we want to grow outside of that core base, we can try to market differently towards women. Or you can also see what's working better on each social media platform. So while you attach that link to every social media, for example, for me, I market different on every platform. For example, with Twitter, yes, I post my video there. I post the description, but I also like to do a poll when I can. I like to also if it's a question or something that can cause conversation, I like to push that into the Twitter conversation some, because Twitter is an open space for open conversation. People retweet, people who don't even follow you, may not even be interested in the podcast, can see that, and then that generates and gets your name and your content out there more on those platforms. For example, with Facebook groups are huge. And that same video content may need to be tweaked some for Facebook. With Instagram is something that, and I hate that my original Instagram page, because I had almost 2,000 followers on the original Wake and Soul Instagram page before they fucking dumb shit. But Instagram, I market a little bit differently there. For me, it's again some of the polls and the stories, but also how you use IGTV and Reels versus how you just do regular videos. I haven't quite cracked TikTok yet, so that's something I'm not working on. But the purpose is that you can see what's more successful as far as engagement. That's actually building, other than just posting your links and sending it to a bunch of people, because you may not know. And again, outside of just posting just the link to your episode, you get that and you can see how many people, even if you do decide to do the spam through the DM thing, if you have that bit.ly link, that lets you know how successful you actually are in doing that. If you know you have 100 followers and you DM basically all 100 followers that link, and you see, okay, out of that, only 25 people are clicking it, then that's not a good marketing tool for you. Now, as far as the co-building with other podcasters, this is my thing, and I know a lot of people don't like it when this is said. Sending your link or tagging a bunch of other creatives in it just because they follow you is more annoying than it's ever going to be true building your brand or your product. Because at the end of the day, we get spam and bombarded with so many links that it really doesn't go far. When you connect and actually build with people who fuck with your content, that is the first thing that you want to do. If you find another creative who listens to your podcast, who listens to your episodes, and then you engage in a conversation publicly with them on one of those social media platforms, you start creating that aura. And the thing is that humans hate feeling like they're left out or they're missing on something. So if they see you having this great conversation, like, wow, that seems interesting, let me go listen to this podcast and then jump in this conversation, because they may even jump in it because of something that you're talking about, or the conversation that spurns off from your podcast is something that they're educated on, or that they watch too, or whatever else. They may jump in and then afterwards say, well, let me go check this out. They're talking about some stuff I like. But when you do the blind retweet, just retweet, the engagement on those are always going to be less, and thus you're not actually building. You're connecting to a degree, and then we can even at some point break down how many actual connections are built down from that, but you're not actually building. And then that brings us to another thing, is like collabing with people with not similar content necessarily, but similar mindsets in what you want to do with podcasting. If you try to connect with somebody, and that's not, let me not say connect, building with the person, because if you try to build with somebody who just looks at this as a hobby and they really could care less if they get from 5 to 25 downloads, while you're really trying to make this brand something that you can maybe at some point generate revenue off of, you have to realize that you're not aligned in your goals there. And that doesn't mean you can't connect with them. That doesn't mean you can't necessarily make great content with them. That doesn't necessarily mean that you can't build a friendship or whatever. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying realize that when you're actually trying to build, be intentional about those people that you're building with. That's what I have to say on the building aspect of it. We're going to talk about branding, but I'm going to bring in a special guest to talk about branding, and we're going to be bringing in Brooke.
This has been a presentation of the Breaks Media.